walking down the street or at the mall or in any store, and all of a sudden you get stopped by a police officer for looking suspicious. The Fourth Amendment specifically states that American citizens shall not be violated in their right to privacy and the right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizures. There was a reason that this amendment was created, so why would we abuse it? People in New York, starting in 2012, New York, the police department decided that they were going to enact this new policy called Stop and Frisk. And it's based off of their own personal judgments, their gut feelings, instead of actual facts. Probable causes are based on your own personal feelings, as I already mentioned, not facts. Evidence and facts should be what constitutes search and seizures with a warrant, not gut feelings, because feelings can actually be misleading and they can be really false. So what that does, as utilizing Stop and Frisk, is it actually decreases the value of that Fourth Amendment, saying that we're protected in that right, we're protected to our privacy, so on and so forth. There are many reasons why this is a bad thing. First of all, the practice of Stop and Frisk, like I said, is unconstitutional. It is a form of indirect racial profiling. A group that is targeted in New York City are Latinos and Blacks. They're big targets of this, and a lot of innocent people actually get targeted for a Stop and Frisk. In fact, 532,900 people in 2012 alone got stopped and frisked based off of an officer's judgment, personal feeling, due to the person looking suspicious. 89% of those people were innocent, and in fact only 10% of those people were white. The other people, Hispanics and Latinos, there was 55% of those who were stopped were black, and 32% of which were Latino. So this can also lead to an abuse of power by police officers and law enforcement officials. And as I had already mentioned, the officers are only stopping you based off of what they think looks suspicious. Well, what is considered to be suspicious? There needs to be a clear policy if you're going to enact this. And according to the Brooklyn Law Review, the department's failure to set forth a clear policy has damaged the NYPD's reputation and could open up the city to extensive litigation for violations of constitutional rights. What that's saying is officers are just stopping people, and there's not really a clear standard or a clear policy for why they can do this. So officers and law enforcement officials are just walking the streets of New York and just stopping people because they feel like it. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't really want to be stopped and frisked for no reason if I was just carrying my groceries home or, carrying shopping bags down New York City or whatever. Innocent people should not be subjected or forced to be searched without a warrant or to be frisked without a warrant. It violates your right to privacy, and it violates your right under the Fourth Amendment. As I also mentioned, what determines this probable cause. Stop and frisk is only based off of your specific and articulate facts and not good, hard evidence, like a warrant or like the Fourth Amendment suggests, because the Fourth Amendment, you have to have a warrant to conduct these searches and seizures. Whereas stop and frisk, you're just going off of an officer's word and not possibly an innocent person who's walking the streets. It allows for a police officer to freely stop and frisk anyone they choose for any reason, and it's their alleged probable cause, not facts. It can also cause police corruption, which, like I've also mentioned, is an abuse of power, and it just leads to racial profiling. Thank you.
All right, now 2 minute question.
All right. I just wanted to, what does the Fourth Amendment, how does it characterize searches and seizures?
Well, it actually says that the search and seizure is by a warrant, and it's based off of evidence and facts. You can't just go into somebody's home or go and talk to a person because you feel like they're suspicious.
Okay, but I guess I was looking at specifically what it describes against, like searches and seizures, kind of.
Describes against?
Yeah.
Meaning?
Like, what does it say? Like, how does it describe the search and seizure? Like,
in the Fourth Amendment?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Kind of search and seizure says it.
It mostly talks about search and seizures in homes, not really stopping and frisking people on the streets, which in New York City, that's what they're doing. Instead of searching people on the streets, they're actually, or in their homes, they're stopping people on the streets just for looking suspicious. And they'll search them and frisk them.
Okay. Also, you mentioned that, you mentioned some statistics too, but I won't get to them until I show it. But you said that Hispanics weren't, like, the numbers were up, like the numbers that were like stop and frisk didn't turn up or anything.
Well,
I wasn't.
the amount of people who were stopped, 89% of those people were innocent, but the majority of people who actually were stopped were 50% were black, 32% were Latino, and only 10% were white. And that was just in 2012 alone.
So you made that as a race issue, like?
Yeah, it targets racial profiling.
No,
That's it.
I don't.
Okay.
Just start whenever.
Yes.
Yes. We would like to refute stop and frisk constitutes reasonable search and seizures. To understand stop and frisk, I really do believe that you need to know the history behind it first. It first became a main thing in the late 60s whenever they had the Detroit riots in 1968 and beyond. They had all the stuff going on with Vietnam, and Vietnam War really peaked around 1968. And so that brought around the Terry versus Ohio case in 1968, which pretty much allowed stop and frisk. It pretty much said that it is not unconstitutional to be stopped and frisked in the street to deter violence. That is the only thing that they are trying to stop here is violence. It's not about race, it's about staying safe. As you guys mentioned, probable cause is a thing. Probable cause is the key to executing randomized searches and seizures. Like I said before, it is only important to deter from violent crimes. That is the only thing that we're trying to do here, is deter from violent crimes. We are not trying to racial profile anybody. But, however, as you did mention some statistics about who was stopped and frisked, you have to look at who commits the crimes. As you look at who commits the crimes, back in 2012, 87% of the people stopped under stop and frisk were black or Latino. But that same year, more than 90% of those identified as murder suspects were also black and Latino. So whenever you look at that, it's like, well, of course they're going to stop more black and Latinos whenever black and Latinos statistically create more crimes. It goes on later to say that in 2009, together blacks and Hispanics committed 98% of all shootings. All shootings with, of course, obvious guns. Another plus to stop and frisk is getting rid of illegal guns. People carrying illegal guns. In 2011, 770 guns were recovered across New York during frisks. Those are illegal guns. Illegal guns that make people having illegal guns make it harder for people with gun licenses and hunters licenses. It makes it harder for them to actually own guns and protect themselves whenever they have a license to do it. People with illegal guns, they're the ones that make everything so hard on everybody else that goes through the actual steps of getting the guns and being legalized. talking about legalizing guns and such like that, the crime rates, you have to look, have decreased dramatically in New York City and other major big cities because of stop and frisk seizures. Between 1991 and 2009, New York did experience the broadest and deepest decline of violent crimes of any major American city. They dropped 5.05% for every 100,000 people in New York City. There are millions of people. So when you put it that way, it is beyond imaginable how many violence crimes that they stopped. Thank you.
And then we've got 2 minute CX.
So you're saying that it is to stop violence, but how is it exactly stopping violence when you look at like the Michael Brown case and the Trayvon Martin case, and it's originally there to stop crime and violence, but it's causing more crime and violence afterwards, like the aftermath. So
Well, when you think about it, the people that are only the aftermath causing it, those are people that don't have all of the information. You have to look at it as, I mean, we do understand that what happened to Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown is a terrible, terrible thing, but you also have to look at what were they doing something wrong. You have to get your race completely out of it, because what if it was a white male that got shot by a black officer? You know what I'm saying? If that would change, yes, that would change it completely.
yes. Okay, so then also saying you're not trying to racially profile, that's true, but then how do we know that the white citizens aren't the ones that are carrying the illegal guns, like you said, because they're not stopping the white as much as they're stopping the blacks and Latinos. So how do we know that the whites aren't the ones that are carrying all the illegal guns?
Well, we're not trying to say that they're not carrying illegal guns, because as we know, there's crazy white people out there too. But we're also saying statistics show, it is literally in the statistics, that whites do not commit as many crimes as the black and Latinos in New York City.
Okay. And then also I wanted to ask, when you were talking about carrying illegal guns, how do you know that it's illegal? How do you know, like, oh, that person's carrying a illegal gun?
Well, of course you don't know that until you stop and frisk, but you, at all times, if you have a gun on your body, you have to have concealed handgun license. And if that license is not valid, or if it is not in date, or anything like that, you get penalized.
All right, good job. And now,
Okay, first off, I'd like to clarify what the Fourth Amendment says, verbatim, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, I don't know about everyone else in this room, but what strikes me in this quote is that keyword unreasonable. Now, it was ruled in Elkins versus United States, or it was a comment, more or less, in 1960, that it must always be remembered that what the Constitution forbids is not all searches and seizures, but unreasonable searches and seizures. Fast forward to 1967, 1968, Terry v. Ohio. It reiterates that fact that its Fourth Amendment is protecting citizens against unreasonable searches and seizures. And the establishment in Terry, or the verdict of Terry v. Ohio permits authorities to frisk, deter from violent crimes. And that's what the point of it is. Okay. Does not violate the Fourth Amendment. I just showed that. So any argument against, the Fourth Amendment, it's not going to hold because it's not classified as unreasonable. Okay. As far as race and racial profiling, the statistics clearly show. Well, this was pulled from 2014. Okay, so it's very recent this month that 87% of the people stopped under stop and frisk 2012 were black or Latino, and that 9% were white. Okay, those numbers do seem like skewed to blacks and Latinos, but that same year, more than 90% of those identified as murder suspects were blacks or Latino, and just 7% were white. So the stop and frisk policy reflects who is being stopped and frisked reflects the statistics of the crime in that area. So it's not unjust in that sense. As far as in schools, we haven't touched on this yet. This is important. Picking school shootings, it's happening more than ever now. As far as putting metal detectors in schools, having a police officer on duty on the campus. These are all preventative measures along with stop and frisk so that our schools remain safe and children and faculty are not getting hurt by people bringing guns to school, which otherwise could have been deterred if metal detectors and other preventative measures were put in place.
30 seconds.
With that, I'd like to reiterate, it's not going against the Fourth Amendment, and it's not a sense of racial profiling because people being stopped based on statistics from before, not a kind of, a view that the police have against Latinos and blacks.
All right, and we've got 2 minutes.
Okay. You were saying that you were defining the Fourth Amendment and defining what unreasonable is, but I ask why is it reasonable to stop the 89% of innocent people who were in the street instead of going out and actually attending to the actual crimes that are being committed? Why would police officers waste their time trying to stop people who were proven to be innocent? It's really ineffective that these officers are conducting these stop and frisk based off of the statistics.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that cops weren't or neglecting crimes that are ongoing, that are actually going on, and to just harass people. But I'd like to say, I got to point the statistics again. Based on what we're seeing, in these urban areas, blacks and Latinos are overwhelmingly leading violent crimes, and the stop and frisk, the number of the whites versus blacks and Latinos who are being checked, it matches up with the historical kind of the violence that's going on in the city.
Okay, so if the majority of the city are filled with blacks and Latinos and they all of a sudden decided to enact this policy, wouldn't that be racial profiling in itself because they're trying to stop the black and Latinos from crime?
Well, it's not black, it's just anyone who's doing violent crime. This isn't targeted especially to one demographic. This is just what the data is showing them. You go into the records and you see overwhelmingly it's the black and Latinos are doing this. So their focus is shifted to that. Why would you shift more focus onto a group that isn't causing as much trouble? That seems ineffective.
That does seem ineffective, but it's more ineffective when there are still other kinds of numbers still show that, here's another statistic right here, there are 685,000 reported stops and frisks, and only approximately 75,000 people were arrested. The rest were sent on their way.
All right. And to the front here.
Okay, so first I want to start by saying that stopping and frisking is a direct violation of someone's security because the word is subjective. The security is going to mean something different to everybody. Some are going to find stopping, frisking comforting and find a sense of security and safeness in that, but some are going to find it offensive and profiling. Next I want to ask, how is it effective? Because I want to take you back to what Samantha said earlier with the 685,000 people reported being stopped and frisked. The statistics show that only 75,000 of those people were arrested and ticketed, and 610,000 were simply sent on their way. So by saying that, these citizens who are being stopped and frisked, the majority of them that were stopped were innocent. So the majority of them that were innocent were, it was against their constitutional rights. And then I'm going to take you, who is saying that being stopped and frisked for no reason is okay? I'm going to take you back to racial profiling with a quote from the Stop and Frisk Disparity from the National Review. They said, "The caricature of stop and frisk has NYPD officers randomly scooping up young black and Hispanic men based on nothing more than their race and turning their pockets out in hopes of finding something incriminating. This is unconstitutional." That is a quote explaining the racial profiling. If you go to the Trayvon Martin case, we've not touched on this yet, but he was not shot by a police officer. He wasn't stopped and frisked by a police officer, but it was a neighborhood watch captain. But he was stopped by him because he looked real suspicious. Same reason that police officers are stopping and frisking people is because they look suspicious to them. And in a result of that, he ended up getting shot and killed. So we ask, why did Zimmerman find Trayvon suspicious? We ask, why did he pursue the boy after the operator told him not to? Why did he get out of the car? Why did he take his gun when he did? How is it self-defense when you're one in pursuit? Who initiated the altercation? Who cried for help? Did Trayvon's body show evidence of a struggle? What moves Zimmerman to use lethal force? These are all questions that we will never really know the answer to, but having to ask these questions seems unconstitutional to me. Why do we need to ask these questions? Why did this happen to this boy when this shouldn't be, if stop and frisk is constitutional, if it was ruled constitutional. And another quote I wanted to touch on was back in the beginning when Samantha went through, the NACL reporter on the Americas said, "The practice of stop and frisk is unconstitutional because it violates the civil rights of blacks and Latinos who are disproportionately targeted to the program." That's another form of indirect racial profiling. So that's it. That's all I have.
And then we've got 2 minutes, right?
Yes. So what is your definition in a couple of words to suspicious, the word suspicious?
I guess I would say their behavior, the way they're walking down the street, the way they're looking around, things like that, I guess.
And then, by saying that these two cases of men who were killed, are you saying that all cops are stereotyped to be bad or racist?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that stop and frisking is more on the lines of hurting things instead of helping. I'm not saying that it's all cops that are the problem. In these cases, I'm not saying that cops are the problem there either, but in
let's say you were out on the street and someone looked suspicious around you, would you run to a cop or would you run home?
I would run to a cop,
Run to a cop, right?
but but my look on how suspicious is different than other people. So like I was saying, the security
But
is
overall,
different,
safety is important.
different people. Safety is important, yes.
Would you say that,
I think that there are different ways that you can
okay,
get safety.
is feeling uncomfortable more important than safety for all?
Is what?
Is being, like, feel uncomfortable, is that more important than providing safety for everybody?
I don't think there's really much harm in feeling uncomfortable around someone.
So if you're innocent and they frisk you, what do you have to fear?
Well, it's not that you have to fear something, it's that it's against your constitutional rights. They're taking advantage of your privacy.
Okay. So privacy is not really actually in the Constitution, it's just implied, not so much there.
Well, it says it is your right to privacy and right to reasonable search and seizure, so.
But isn't that according to houses, not so much other?
Let's talk.
Sorry, that's my
Okay.
Okay. Stop and frisk, like many other laws and regulations within the criminal justice system, must pass a test of constitutionality before these laws are upheld and carried out throughout our society. Laws that deal with other forms of general public misconduct, such as vagrancy and loitering, often fail to be recognized as constitutional because they fall under a doctrine listed as void for vagueness. Now, what void for vagueness is if a law should be excessively general, or if it does not specify what grounds the law was broken upon, then the case is void. I do agree that stop and frisk could possibly lead to crimes being prevented before they even happen. However, the way that stop and frisk is carried out is highly arbitrary because, like we all have reiterated continuously, there is no clear and defined reason that you can stop somebody other than the officer's suspicion or intuition about an individual, which is not probable cause, because probable cause is based on fact. If an officer pulls you over and he smells marijuana, that's probable cause for you to get out the car and him to search it. Not because, oh, he looked like he may have smoked some weed earlier. That's not probable cause, but the fact that he actually smelled that weed gives him a reason to want to search that car. Secondly, I would like to reiterate the statistics since everyone wants to pull statistic out. A 2013 census from the New York Times and the Huffington Post listed the New York demographics as 23.4% black, 47.3% white and Asian and Native American, and 29.3% Latino. And although the black and Latino population is far under the white, it more than quadruples the stop and frisk rate, even though white people far outnumber the rest. Meaning that white citizens in the city are not pushing for a new policy and are not trying to change anything because they're not a part of the affected population. If you're making rules and they don't apply to you, then what do you care what's going on over here if you're not living over there? Lastly, I would want to pose the question, if stop and frisk is a policy that we're looking to uphold, then why is there no clear-cut definition for what the grounds are to be stop and frisk, other than an officer's discretion, which we have found out as of late, officer discretion isn't always the best thing for citizen livelihood, as we've had many citizens facing fatal situations because of poor officer discretion. That's my take on that.
All right. And now we're to, there we go.
I would like to say that stop and frisk, again, is not a race issue, it is a safety issue. Okay, so Michael brought up a good point whenever he started talking about schools. We have metal detectors at schools, sometimes we have cops with dogs at schools, sometimes we have them go through your bags while you're passing through the metal detector. Does that mean that's a violation of your privacy. Does that mean that whole school thinks that you're a criminal? No, but they want to prevent a crime, and that's what Stop and Frisk ultimately wants, to prevent all those crimes. And we have here information where we talk about how whenever they started doing this at schools, or even airports, they do it at airports. Does that mean they're racist? No, they just want to provide safety for everyone who's going on the plane or going to school. And we have evidence where it speaks about how in school there has been less abuse of bringing guns onto school campuses, drugs that can lead to crimes, and so on. And we also want Stop and Frisk for gun control. That means that you shouldn't be carrying a gun if you don't have a license to. Does that mean, oh, he violated my crime because he took my gun? You shouldn't have had it in the first place. If you had it illegally, it's because you were going to do something illegal with it. So there goes that one. And they keep talking about, oh, the Fourth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. Well, the Fourth Amendment constitutes 2 homes. And we began the debate speaking about one of the important trials that stated a precedent. The Terry versus Ohio said you can search due to probable cause. A precedent that the Supreme Court already put there. That means that it's okay. If I think that you look suspicious or probable cause, we can search you because that court case offered that opinion and it is a precedent for following court cases, meaning it's okay. Also, they keep talking about, well, racist or the cops. We can't stereotype that all cops are racist or that all cops, when cops go into the police academy, they don't go into say, I'm going to get all the Black and Latino people out of here, or I'm going to try to get them to commit a crime. They go with the intent to provide safety. So when they do stop and frisk and you are innocent, there shouldn't be a need for a discomfort when you know that they're doing this for the safety for you. Also, we have, and if they keep on with the race issue, we have evidence from the Washington Examiner, from Penn Law Review, that states that all the people who are victims of these crimes are actually minorities that are saying that it's Black people and Latino people who have been attacking them. So this is not so much the cops saying it, but it's the actual victims of these crimes who have stated that it is their own race that has actually done these things to them. Also, we have, overall their case doesn't really make sense because we have already said why it does not violate the Fourth Amendment, why it's not racist, and why it actually impacts the whole society in New York and in other places too, because just providing more safety is good overall. And if that means if someone looks suspicious and you're really scared, the cop should be able to go do something about it before he pulls out a gun or he runs into the school or he tries to mug you or something. So I think that's why the stop and frisk policy should be constituted. Thank you.
All right, and then for our summaries.
I want to start by reiterating the resolution, which is this House believes stop and frisk constitutes unreasonable search and seizure. Now, although the word unreasonable is very subjective, I want to say that the affirmative team wins this debate because most of the negative defense falls back on too much subjectivity. What looks suspicious to you may not look suspicious to me. Mike's got a big jacket on. Let's search him. He's got a gun in there. That's not concrete enough for me to want to search him. Second of all, everybody's pulling out the statistics, but do you know that white citizens dominate violent crime when they are incarcerated? And while there are far more blacks that are incarcerated, most of them are in jail for things like petty larceny and residential burglary and things of that nature, while white citizens dominate with capital murder, murder in the first degree, and statutory and regular rape. Just to say that if everything is about violence and stopping the violence before it begets more violence, then why don't we search who's not being searched, which is the predominantly white citizens in the city that are not being searched. And even though statistically there are more blacks in jail, the ones that are actually causing the violence are the ones that are not being searched in the end. So that is why the team wins.
All right, and now we'll have our summary speech from the negative.
I'm over 4 minutes.
Alrighty. I would just like to point out that although what you did say did make a very good argument, you didn't have any statistics to back up what you said about whites being in jail and all that good stuff. So does that make you a racist? Are you racist against the white people and stuff like that? I just wanted to point that one out. Like we like to say before in all of our arguments, this is not a race issue, this is a safety issue. Whenever they put down in these statistics that about blacks and Latinos were 9 times as likely to be stopped as whites, but it's proven that they create more crimes. So of course they're going to get stopped more. It's just common sense. These crime data are not some artifact the police devised out of their skewed racial mindsets. Okay, these are what the victims of those crimes, the vast majority of those who are minority themselves, report to the police. They're the ones that say, hey look, yeah, I'm a Latino woman and I got raped by a black man. It's not like it's everyone for themselves. They are looking out for their own safety, and this poor Latino woman does not want this black man to go up and kill somebody else. You know, it's all in the facts. It's all in the statistics. Like, these aren't something that we're gonna make up. They're not just something that we're gonna pull out of our heads and be like, it makes complete sense. We win this. I believe that we have won this argument because we have refuted every aspect that you guys have thrown out at us. The Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment obviously does not only protects against your house searches and seizures, and they're unreasonable, but whenever you have to stop and frisk, it is for a reasonable cause. You guys also said racial profiling. Like we said, it is not a race issue, it's a safety issue. You guys also said probable cause. Well, what's probable cause? We also said if you look suspicious, of course, that is subjective to your own opinion. We understand that completely. But the safety of the people, the vast majority of people, is way more important than the subjectivity of one person's beliefs, their thinking, their thoughts, and all that. Like you said about the black and Latinos, like we said again in race, we're not trying to say that all cops are white and that they are attacking Latinos and blacks. There are black cops, there are Hispanic cops, and guess what? They're going to search Hispanic people, they're going to search black people. They're the same race. They're going to search them just like white cops search white people. So race here isn't necessarily the biggest issue. You have to look at safety, and that's what Stop and Frisk is trying to overall bring more of. We want to defer the crime. We want to get rid of them. That's all we're trying to do here. We're not trying to put blacks and Hispanics in jail. That's the last thing we need.
All right, good job, everyone.